Welcome to the lecture series on convolutional neural networks. This video closes our discussion of convolutional neural networks with a focus on applications beyond object recognition. We can analyze the properties of neurons in different layers of a neural network by looking at the images that maximize best a certain unit in a given layer. And what we find is that in the first layer, after the first convolutional max pooling stage, the best images are those that contain edges. And here are a couple of these edge images. And this is interesting because it relates to neuroscience. In neuroscience, in the first layer in the brain, there are two types of cells in the first. When I say layer in the brain, I mean an area of visual cortex, called the visual area with number 1. And then in this area, you have so-called simple cells that respond best, for example, to a white bar surrounded by black bars. So it's an edge detector. Now, if you take several of these white bar detectors, but put the bar at different locations, and you make some max pooling operation afterwards, you get, in a model of the brain, something like a complex cell. So complex cells already have more invariance, more tolerance to the exact location of this white bar, this white edge that we are talking about. And now on the following slides, we will now walk through different layers, and each time we show the best images that image patches, for example, this patch here, the 9 best image patches out of a large data set that excite best one specific cell. For example, here, cells in layer 2. And then, so all these 9 responses are the responses to these 9 images to the right, and where the 9 images have been selected to be the ones that maximally excite this one specific unit. And what's shown here is, by using some kind of gradient descent, is the features that really lead to this optimal activation of that unit. And then, for example, for these, you have all sorts of images that contain horizontal stripes, and indeed, it's the horizontal stripe feature that best excites these cells. Then you also have cells that just respond to colors, such that as yellow or light red, orange type red. And this is layer 2. Now let's look at the next layer. In layer 3, we already have somewhat more complex features. For example, here is a cell, and the 9 best images that excite this cell out of a very large database are all images of sort of the upper half of a body, including a head. Note that there's no or only very little translation invariance. Same for these images here. It's round features, and the round feature is always at roughly the same location in the image. Now let's continue to layer 4 and to layer 5. Let's look at layer 5. Here I have one cell in layer 5, and the 9 best images that cause activation of that specific cell are all kind of bicycle wheels, single bicycle wheels. And now you see that we already get quite a bit of translation invariance. Here the wheel is more at the bottom. Here it's a little bit farther up and also a little bit larger. Same kind of statement, a similar kind of statement can be made with the cell that responds to these 9 images. It always responds to images of dogs, animals, and sometimes the best response is in the upper right-hand corner for one image and more in the center for some other image, or even more to the left. And this is an indication that after 5 layers, the network has already instantiated a certain level of translation invariance. So these kind of convolutional neural networks are nowadays used to also compare with neurons in the living brain, the response features of neurons in the brain sciences. Here's a different application that was mentioned in a different session before. This is the neural style. You start off with a standard photograph. This is the waterfront of the city of Tübingen in front of the river Neckar in the southern part of Germany, a very nice university town. And then this image is repainted by interactions between 2 convolutional neural networks in different styles, like a Van Gogh style or a Munch style at the lower right. Let's finish with 2 final applications. One is one can combine a convolutional network with a recurrent neural network, RNN, recurrent neural network, and then the network really reads out a caption like a cow is standing in the middle of a street. Or we can combine convolutional networks with adversarial networks, also called GANs, and then it can be used to generate new images, new faces, new portraits of people that do not exist. So let's summarize. We have covered quite a bit of ground. Convolutional networks use an explicit inductive bias together with transfer learning and with data augmentation. And the convolutions and the max pooling are reasonable inductive biases for natural images. The residual connections that we see in the more modern networks help to learn in very, very deep networks and implicitly adjust the depth of the network. And modern architectures that combine convolutional layers with other features can reach human level performance on recognition tasks. One has to be a little bit careful with the standard ImageNet database because of its bias towards animal breeds, where a referent human who is not trained on these images is of course not that good. And it should also be said that many of these modern convolutional networks can still be fooled and give wrong answers for images that look quite obvious to human observers. Then auto-differentiation is a flexible tool to train across all sorts of different architectures. It's the idea of backprop, but generalized so that it works through max pooling layers, that it works through residual connections, and that it also works through recurrent connections. And finally, in this video, I wanted to point out that convolutional neural networks and neurons in the visual system of real brains have similar properties, similar response properties, and these response properties are also called receptive fields in the neurosciences.